Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the Midday magazine. I'm your host, Burhaan Khan, and today we're going to be talking about Turkey. We're going to be talking about Muslims from Britain and maybe the wider diaspora moving to Muslim countries. And in this show, we're going to be talking about the people moving to Turkey. It seems to be a very popular destination, along with the Gulf countries, along with maybe Pakistan, Morocco, Malaysia. These tend to be the countries that people are going to, but it seems to me the current trend is people going to Turkey more and more, possibly because they're being priced out of the Gulf, possibly because it's easier place to kind of integrate into for people over here. And all these issues I will be discussing with our guests today, Jawad. Assalamu alaikum, Jawad.
Wa alaikum salam.
And Rahana and Noura. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And they'll be giving us insights into how easy it is to get into Turkey, what the lifestyle is like, what the schooling's like, what the food is like, what the Islamic culture is like fitting in, and they'll give us perspectives of coming from the UK, coming from an Arab background, and coming from a parental background as well. Please do join us. We are live on 87.9 FM. You can listen to us on the Android app, ramadanradio.org. Also, you can follow us live there. Live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And please do call in with your questions, your comments. You can text us, you can call us, you can WhatsApp us. The number is 07761 460 614, 07761 460 614. Or actually, I've got it written down in a slightly odd way here. It's 077 614 60614. That's right. That's like the more the easier way of saying it. I should have done that first. But anyway, you can join us there. So let's kick off with a question from myself first. This is Jawad. Why don't you take this one to begin with? So you set up a company called Hijra to Turkey, which facilitates people moving specifically, I think, from the UK. To Turkey, if that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. What have you found, generally speaking, are the reasons people are moving in the first place? What do they tell you when they say we want to move? Is it financial? Is it Islamic? What's going on?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In terms of why we set up hijra2turkey.com and Hijra to Turkey, the WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups, it was really to help people to move over here. And in terms of the issues or the reasons why people are wanting to do Hijra, really just seems to be one reason. Many people are facing difficulties within the particular countries which they are leaving. So whether it's the Western side, so whether it's European countries or the UK, they find problems such as liberalism, secularism, issues with their kids growing up, and generally the fact that Islam is getting harder and harder to practice, implement in their lives or with their children. The things which these kids are facing within schools, they're very, very worried about that as well. And we know the stories, we know the scare stories, we know what's happening in the schools, we know about Prevent, and there's many stories that we know. We've got stories about, mothers whose, some of the kids have gone over to the dark side or drugs or problems or whatever it is, and they want to save the rest of their kids, and they want to bring their kids over here and their families so that they can control at least some of the environment, and offer them an Islamic environment or a better, safer environment for them to grow up and live in. So it's all rotated around Islam, being able to practice Islam more easily and moving away from a secular environment and an Islamophobic environment.
And Rihanna and Noura, have you found a similar sort of reasons that people are giving you? And how realistic is it? How much of a realistic view of somewhere like Turkey do people have when they decide to move? Do they think they're coming to some sort of ideal state? And what kind of expectations should they have if they're coming from that background? What's the real story?
Yes, I think it's the reasons for moving are definitely like Jawad said, because of the culture or the ideas that are prevalent in the countries that they're already living in. They want to leave the atmosphere and come into a country that is a more Muslim country. Having said that, I think it's important to realize that, Turkey is a Muslim country, but it's not necessary that we see Islam everywhere. There are pockets of Islam, in different areas. Some areas are very, secular Western, but some areas are very conservative. So this is something important to realize. And for sure, there is no ideal, anywhere in the world. So when we're coming, what I always say is coming here, you're offering them a better environment where you can have a little bit more control of the kind of schools that they go to, the kind of people they mix in, what they see out in society, especially in the conservative areas. I feel, Turkey is wide, it has many countries, many cities, and even each city has many different areas. So within each of those cities, each of those areas, there are differences. For example, in Istanbul, there are areas that are conservative and there are areas that are more secular. If you go to, for example, Taksim, it's very secular there, a very different kind of lifestyle. If you go to, for example, Başakşehir, Fatih, it's more conservative. So it's important to understand where you are looking to go and what kind of environment you want to have for yourself and for your children, inshallah.
Okay. And Noura, as a female, do you find that the female experience of moving from a European country to Turkey, well, I mean, saying that European country to Turkey is, I suppose, a bit of a contradiction, but you know what I mean. Is it? Do you think it's different for women than men? Do you think it's more difficult? Do you feel that you have more of a drive to move because of the prejudice that women find in the European countries?
I think definitely. So a lot of people that we meet here, or a lot of the people that we left back in our countries, they really have fears about themselves and the kids, definitely. But also, as women living in the West, we all know what it's like, wearing the hijab, wearing the jilbab. We all know what we are looked at like, what people look at us, the ways that they look at us, the way that we are treated. There's a lot of sisters who, who not only fear for their kids, but they really want to live in a country where they are seen as, a member of society, like a worthy member of society. They want to go out with their kids. They don't want to be looked at in, funny ways. They don't want all these comments that we receive, walking the streets in Europe. So I think definitely the women are a drive behind, leaving the Western countries for themselves and definitely for the children. And, just to add one thing to what Rayhana said, I think it's really important to stress that, people have to have realistic expectations of what they're going to find in, in different countries. And it's really important that we don't believe that, leaving a Western country to a Muslim majority country immediately means that our children are safe from any ideas that we don't want them to have or any influence that we don't want them to have. So we still, as women and as mothers, we still have that responsibility to make sure that we go to the right environment. And that is, I think, what Rayhana pointed out, that, Istanbul, for example, is such a big city. There are so many different environments to move into. So you need to be very aware of, the place that you're going.
Yeah. We'll move on to some of the practical stuff around schooling and visas and stuff in a second. I just wanted to follow up on just one point that you guys made, which is that, fair enough, a lot of people do move, and the majority, and I spent 10 years in Qatar as well. And we have our show on Wednesday, inshallah, is about expat life in the Gulf, and we're hoping to do a show around Malaysia, maybe one around Pakistan as well, if we have enough time and enough positive feedback, I suppose. People want to hear it. But there is a wide range of reasons why people move. Yes, the Islamic factor is very strong, but some people just, they just want a different scene. They want, financial security. Yes, they want to move to a Muslim country, but maybe they're not quite as conservative as the people who you're describing. Is Turkey still a place where you think people like that can go to? Maybe women who don't wear hijab, or the expats? Is there a split? Are they kind of not looked down upon, but are they seen as not proper? Their reasons are not as legitimate.
I wouldn't say that their reasons are not legitimate. I think the way Turkey is very welcoming for everyone, and there are different expats coming from all sorts of different backgrounds here. So we see, even in terms of what we would say, practicing Muslims, or even people who are coming just for a different pace of life. We definitely see that here. People want to come to get away from maybe the hustle and bustle of the Western life, or the pressures maybe of the Western life. They
Yeah.
want to come over here, and often I do hear this a lot. People want to have, you know, a place where it's not so crowded, maybe in the urban area where there is some land, you know, that can offer them that quiet. And those, you know, for those people, they would maybe look towards the south of Turkey, where you have that kind of area, you know, where it's less busy, more quiet, more sun. So it's for, you know, in terms of Turkey being expats welcoming, I don't think there's any kind of divide, you know.
Okay.
For ourselves, definitely in our community, you know, we see all sorts of people from different backgrounds, and in our community, everyone is welcome, alhamdulillah.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So let's move on to some of the practicalities. Money is a practicality. That's most people won't move until they know, or they probably shouldn't move, right? I guess you're the experts here, until they have some kind of secure source of income. Or can they just up and leave and hope to get a job over there? And what kind of jobs are available? What's the cost of living? Just give us an overview, please, Jawad, of what the practicalities are when it comes to the financial side of things.
Okay, inshallah. Yeah, people come over here thinking they're going to get a job just like this. Turkey actually makes it very hard for you to get a job. You need to get a work permit in order to do that, and that's not something easy to do. Companies need to employ 5 Turks beforehand before they can give a working permit to a foreigner. Okay. And they have to justify employing you as well. So yeah, it's not easy for a Turkish company to do that, and you'll find very few Turkish companies advertising in international magazines or websites, etc., looking for people from abroad. There's a lot of people already from abroad within Turkey, in Istanbul, looking for jobs. So to be honest, I wouldn't recommend anyone coming here looking for jobs, not unless they're a particular field. So maybe teaching, for example, English teachers, everyone's onto that and everyone's trying to do that. So that's, but again, there's lots of people
saturated
here.
Market.
That's getting fairly saturated as well. So, and then the amount that you can expect is going to be much, much lower than the Gulf countries as well. The cost of living here is lower, generally speaking, but also the salaries are a lot lower as well. So my general advice to someone is that if you can work remotely, if you've got a business somewhere, if you've got income coming from outside, you will fare much better within Turkey, within Istanbul. But if you're going to come here looking for a job, it's going to be very hard to find something.
So you mean maybe have a rental income from your home country, or a business which you're just kind of running, that kind of thing. But what about what kind of rental income within Turkey? Would that be an option?
No, generally speaking, the return on investment with rental income is a lot lower than other countries. So if you are looking at it from that perspective, then you think, you know, over here on average, maybe 4 to 5%, maybe other countries you can get more. You can get maybe 8% over here, but definitely, if you're going to be living here and your base is going to be here and this is your home, then you need to invest there. You're going to live here and your life's here and your money's from here. So, you know, but starting off on the ladder in terms of the property ladder here is a lot more affordable. Okay. So to say I can buy something in England and get 8%, well, perhaps you can buy 2 places over here for that same amount of money, perhaps. Yeah. So you need to look at your finances and your resources to see what you can do. In terms of, you know, some people we've talked to, they are accumulating wealth, shall we say, but they're forever accumulating wealth and procrastinating whether they should leave or not leave or come to Turkey. And for me, you need to have a certain set of criteria. And the one that I normally go back to is Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, for example, when it came to war booty, he took 1 year's worth of war booty. And for me, this becomes like a criteria for you. You know, rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't say that you've secured all your wealth and then you're going to come. It's from Allah. It'll come whenever it's going to come, wherever it's going to come, and you put your effort in. But if you wanted like a guideline or a basis, then you need to have at least probably 1 year's worth of money, savings. So money to come here, money to get your your house furnished, your application and stuff, and 1 year's worth of savings at least to tide you by. Then at least, you know, you can start to get in with the community, learn the language, find what opportunities there are, and start to settle and live here. That's if you haven't set up something remote or some online activity or business.
Okay, so the cost of living is quite low there, but relative to that, the salaries are low as well. And so it actually, unless you've got an external source of income, you're going to not actually have a much better lifestyle than you'd have from where you left in the first place, from a financial point of view.
Yeah, true. I mean, I don't like to do comparisons. I mean, we are quite a big family. We've got a 4-bedroom house over here. Rent's about £500 approximately a month. Cost of living, expenditure, etc. Total including the rent's about £1,000 during Corona times. So it's £1,000 a month, including the bills, but not including extracurricular stuff. So maybe like the Quranic Hifz teacher, etc., Arabic and so on. So there's extra lessons, etc. I'm not including that within. But for your basics, £1,000 for a large family, living a simple life is fine.
Okay. And Rahana and Noor, just moving to kind of schooling and stuff. What's the schooling situation for kids coming in from a foreign country? Do they go to the Turkish schools? Do they go to independent schools? How easy is it to find places? Are they private? Is there a cost involved?
Yeah. There are many different types of schoolings available here. So you have the public school, the Turkish public schools, which are Turkish medium. You have private international schools also. Regarding the public schools, the biggest, I think, hurdle for expats is the language. You know, if your children are young, they can go into school, they can pick up the language, and it's fine. But if your children are older, what I found speaking to some people is that, you know, when their children go into schools without the language, they struggle and they stay there for like many years, and they actually finish school a lot later.
Okay.
So that's one of the hurdles, I guess. Inshallah, Noura can speak to you about the private schools, but regarding, for example, another alternative that many expats are doing is homeschooling. So homeschooling is a good option for expats. Where, for example, you can homeschool in the home or collectively as a group. And then in the end, when it comes to exams, for example, IGCSE or A-level, there is provision here for your children to, you know, do that with a private exam set up, inshallah. So it's a good way forward, and a lot of expats are choosing that because, for example, public schools, international schools are very expensive. So for those who can't afford it, you know, and if they can't go to public school either, so homeschooling is also, you know, a good option for that reason too. The homeschooling community is very new here. Homeschooling isn't really it is okay, we can homeschool, so it's a very new kind of concept in Turkey. It's not like the UK where you have homeschool networks and setups and everything. So we're very new here, and with COVID obviously it's all very slow, but there's potential here, inshallah, for homeschooling.
Okay.
So when it comes to the schools, I would definitely agree with the point that Rahana mentioned. So I've seen very few families that had older children that put them into public Turkish schools. So what you would see is that, you know, families with really young children, first graders, second graders, they would put them in Turkish public school, and they would catch the language quite easily, and then just, you know, proceed in a Turkish public school. But what you see around a lot is also people, you know, especially those families that come seeking a more Islamic environment, they would like their children to learn Arabic. So there's a lot of Arabic schools, Arabic private schools that one can actually choose from, and they you know, there are just a lot of them. There's a large variety, and they seem to be quite, you know, quite popular with people. And the cost of that, there's a bit of a range, but it's like round about $2,500 per student per year. In dollars though, not in pounds. And you know, I myself, I've looked at so many Arabic schools, and I really found the prices to be almost the same. And you know, since it's a private school, they offer quite a package to the families, as in, so you get the language, but you also get some of the Islamic, you know, Islamic input for the children. But then also always remembering that in the end, you know, when it comes to the Islamic, you know, parenting of our children, the Islamic education, still, you know, as parents, we should see ourselves responsible for that. We shouldn't believe that, you know, I can hand that over to a school, not even a private school.
So do they not teach Islamia and these kind of things in the Turkish public schools? Is that not part of the curriculum?
No.
No, not as such. I think they have some social studies, and they maybe teach aspects of history, Islamic history, aspects of Islam, but it's not like a comprehensive Islamic school. It's just secular education, maybe.
Exactly.
Okay. So they just kind of maybe play a few episodes of Ertugrul or something like that on in social studies. That's their Islamic history. Okay, fair enough. Okay, you're listening to the Midday Magazine show with me, Burhaan, and my guests, Jawad, Rahana, and Noura. We're talking about moving to Turkey, expat life in Turkey. Please do join us. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, ramadanradio.org. And you can call us and text us with your questions on 077 614 60614. It's 077 614 60614. Okay, so just one thing which kind of occurred to me when you were talking about education and whether to send them to a private school, to an Arabic school, to a Turkish school, etc. If one thing I found in when I was in Qatar is that the expats tend to huddle together, and they don't end up integrating so much with the local community, especially if you don't speak the language. And they kind of become slightly ghettoized, right? And so that then affects, which is kind of, it doesn't affect our generation so much because, you know, we're kind of used to that to some degree. But for the kids who will then be growing up in Turkey, if they become sort of ghettoized, how much does that impact their futures there? Isn't there an argument that actually they should be going to the Turkish schools and they should be living in the Turkish areas, etc., rather than going to independent schools?
It is an argument, definitely, and I think every family goes through that thought process of, you know, what school to send the kids to. But I feel like the thing is, it really depends on the community that you're in, and it really depends on what you're looking for the, you know, for the education of your children. So I feel if it's, you know, so here in Turkey, for example, in Istanbul where we are, it's a really large expat community, and it's very diverse. So it's not really that, you know, it's just one sort of people or one nationality. It's a very, very diverse community. Yeah. And you really feel that, you know, you're integrating into a community that is very diverse, and you're integrating into a community that is very, you know, that really seeks to implement Islamic values in their lives. So you really feel that it's sort of a gain for you and your children.
But is it diverse in terms of just expats, or is it diverse including Turkish people?
It does include Turkish people, though. Yes, okay. It does include Turkish people. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's expats, like diverse in, you know, as an expats, but diverse also in including Turkish people. And I think especially the Turkish people living in these areas, because they're so used to living around expats, they are less reserved, maybe. I'm not to say that other Turkish people are not welcoming, but just that, you know, because they are so used to, you know, interacting with people from different cultural backgrounds, they are very welcoming.
Okay. And Burhaan, what's the necessity for this integration to have Turkish language as under your belt?
Oh yes, definitely. Is very important. I think I guess it's two sides of a coin. You know, my children, they have friends, expat friends who speak English. They have some who also speak Turkish. So it's important to have both of those. But having, like, on a wider scale, you know, if you go outside of your community in order to interact with the wider society, Turkish language is very important. I feel, you know, just for your day-to-day, you know, dealing with people, and then having conversations with people on a larger scale. I think, you know, once we have that language, you're able to do more with that. You know, I was just saying to Nora that, you know, my neighbor, she's a Turkish neighbor. I can only say a couple of sentences to her, so our conversation can only go so far. But inshallah, if I learn more, then we can have better conversations and better interaction, and that way, you know, we can integrate together, like, you know, with that community more because of the language.
Yeah. And any tips on what the best sources are for learning Turkish?
There are many.
There are many. There are many apps. There are many platforms. But one of the things I do find is, you know, going through a course actually really does help, because you get the grammar in your head. You know, you're able to pick up the vocabulary, and then practicing. You know, even if you can't speak properly, just, you know, a few words here and there. Just speak those words, and then you will. You know, the more you interact, the more you try to speak, the more you will pick up, inshallah.
And what's the, maybe Jawad, turn to you, what's the reaction of the people locally? Do they expect you to speak Turkish, or do they appreciate when you try, or do they insist that you speak it, or can they speak, you know, do they mind speaking in English?
Yeah, I think Turks like the Turkish language, and that's what they expect. You're not going to get far knowing a foreign language. My general advice to people is that when you come over here, not unless you're very good at languages, then fair enough, go to a purely Turkish area. But at least know where you're going, get a feel for it. But, you know, for me, it's like, come to an expat area, within 1 year, 2 years, learn the language, and then move off to wherever you have. You don't need hurdles and obstacles by moving straight into, we move, you know, we moved to an Asian side. We spent time on an Asian side, and they all spoke Turkish, and it was very hard, to be honest. So you need to judge which area you're going to. And then, after 1 year, 2 years, you've learned the Turkish language, then, all of Turkey is open to you, to be honest. You can go wherever you like. In terms of business, you need to have your Turkish language. In terms of your children growing up, yes, Turkish will be very important. You'll find that you'll, call up some people, restaurants or information centers. You don't know Turkish, they're going to put the phone down on you.
Yeah. I had that in Qatar, actually.
Yeah, so you don't get far. You do need to learn the Turkish language, and they don't have much patience if you don't know the Turkish language.
Okay. We've had a question come in via text asking which areas in Istanbul would you recommend for families? So I'm assuming, Istanbul's a huge city. I think it's sort of 18 million people or something, right? So you've got lots of different districts, lots of different areas. Some which you've already mentioned, Rahana mentioned, are more conservative, less conservative, etc. So the question being, which would you recommend for families? I guess, it depends on what your background is and what your expectations are, but I suppose the questioner wants to know more from a kid's point of view, that there'll be things for families to do, for children to do, rather than for people who are single or couples to do. Who wants to take that one? Rehan and Noor, do you want to have a crack at that?
I think, the area that Rehana just mentioned, which is called Başakşehir, is an area that is really caters to families. And there's a very interesting concept of living. So usually in these kind of areas, you would live in so-called compounds. I guess that's what you call them in English. Here they call them cités. So it's a concept where there's like several buildings within one complex, but it's a closed complex, and it feels very safe. It's very family friendly. It has a lot of facilities. So, especially during Corona time, it was very nice for the kids to be able to interact and socialize with other kids within this, within the security of the compound, within the security of the cité. And it's really easy, to make contact with other families. It's really easy then to organize things, maybe not just for the kids to play, but maybe, for the women to organize themselves, to have, Turkish lessons together, to do tajweed together, to learn Quran together. It gives you so many possibilities of interacting with other families. So I really found that these kind of areas that have this living concept of the compounds and the cités, they really, really cater to families' needs. Yeah.
Okay. So that was a question that we came in, and if anybody else wants to text in, the number is 077 614 60614. Please do give us your questions, your comments. You can call in if you wish to. You don't have to text in. Joel, I just want to ask you about, so the question was around Istanbul, right? But Turkey is much bigger than Istanbul. I know most people will probably default to Istanbul, and then they'll focus in on a particular area, as this questioner had asked. But what about outside of Istanbul? Is that a realistic place to go? Ankara, or to the south coast, Izmir, these places, to Bursa. I know a lot of people, certainly from my experience from the Gulf, they go to Bursa. And I visited there when I was there. I wasn't quite sure that was somewhere I'd necessarily want to live, because it's very much in the heart of Turkey. I wasn't sure that would be somewhere I could necessarily integrate. But can you speak to us a little bit about outside of Istanbul?
Yep, sure. We all want to, I'd love to live near a beach, have the sun, soaking up the, have a go for a little dip or something. But frankly speaking, most of the south. Yeah, I wish. No, I don't actually. But the reality is that in all of these seaside resorts, sandy beaches, sunny places, you're going to have a problem. You got all the tourists and you got all the foreign tourists. And most of the Islamic people who leave particular countries, they're not looking to see what you normally find on beaches with foreigners, and what they're wearing. And then most of the restaurants there will be full of alcohol, selling alcohol and stuff like this. So it's not necessarily a good environment to be in, and it's a difficult environment to be in. So normally that turns people off, or they realize they've made a mistake. There are small communities beginning to grow, but again, because they're so small, the opportunity to make friendship is rather low. So for example, I know someone who wanted to move into Antalya. They said, there's a couple of Muslim families there. I've heard about them. And they went there and they found that they could not really mix with them. They didn't share the same ideas. And those two Muslim families, they were just happy with themselves. So really, if you plan to go to some of these South Coast cities, you want to find a community or people who you've got common thoughts with, you can make friends with. Otherwise, you might find that your living experience would be very lonely, or very hard. And what you left England for, I went to Fethiye, and for me it was not the place for me. There were English lager outs there, etc. It's not why I left England, or to go and visit these. It's I'd rather be in a place where I can easily practice my Islam.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any experience though of I know you said you lived in Fethiye, is that right? But the other big, does anybody ever go from here or from the European countries to somewhere like Ankara? To the
Ankara,
capital?
less so. Some people are going to Bursa now. So I've got a WhatsApp group on Hijra to Turkey, and the people heading towards Bursa, they're trying to set up in Bursa. Some people trying to set up in Antalya as well. I think it's early days for communities, or a decent sized community, etc. Once there is one, inshallah, it should be good. But at the moment, they're fairly small.
Okay. Now, one of the things which people always talk about when it comes to Turkey is Turkish food, right? So it's very popular, even over here in London. It's very popular in the restaurants. It's very popular when I was in Doha as well. But what I found when I was in Istanbul is that you don't get much other than Turkish food, right? There doesn't seem to be a huge variety of cultural dishes outside of the tourist areas. Is that just my own prejudice, or am I right in saying that?
I think that's generally right, but as the expat community is growing, there are now places where you get Arab food. There are now, for example, a Pakistani restaurant has opened up in Istanbul. So things are opening up, but slowly.
I think it has to do with Turkish people in general being a bit reserved, trying new foods. That's my personal experience. So for example, we would invite people over and cook for them, or just give offer them a snack or something, and they would be very curious about what is this, and some of them would even refuse and be like, no thank you, I don't know what this is. So I think maybe Turkish people are a bit reserved when it comes to other kitchens and dishes, but with the expat community growing, I really feel like restaurants are just popping up everywhere, with Arabic dishes, Pakistani, Indian food. I think it's on the rise, but maybe it just needs some time.
Right. I think most, certainly from the UK, correct me if I'm wrong, I think most of the expats that go to Turkey from the UK are from like a Pakistani, Bangladeshi, kind of South Asian background, right? They would probably be quite scared from what you're saying that there's a Pakistani restaurant there. That'd be
maybe 2 or 3. I think maybe 2 or 3.
I mean, that's an idea for them. That could be a
ones.
business idea for them to open up more restaurants. Yemeni restaurants, they have few Indian, Pakistani restaurants, a lot of Arabic restaurants.
Okay.
And obviously a lot of Turkish.
Yeah. But for sure, I think one thing just to add maybe regarding, like, for example, Pakistani food. I mean, I know there are a lot of Arab shops in the Arabic areas, and many of the products that they are used to are available. But for example, for Pakistani cuisine, it can be a struggle to maybe find the same kind of spices that you are used to. They can be found, but you have to look for them.
Yeah. Okay. Because of course, I mean, the depending on which area of the Arab lands, the food and the culture is actually there's crossover, isn't there? Especially towards the south of Turkey, with Syria, with Iraq, etc. So some of the food also is similar. So we had another question in from someone called Tamkeen, asking, what about retirement over 50s? I heard if you buy a property, you can become Turkish citizens. So this is quite a big issue at the moment, isn't it? There's a threshold of property value that you have to purchase, and then there's citizenship. And then he's asking specifically about retirement. Can you answer this question? Jawad, maybe you want to have a look at this?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I work as a MLAC as well, property agent as well. We had a solicitor come over and he bought a property for citizenship. For citizenship, currently, it's a $250,000 value. So if you buy a property, habitable place for $250,000, there are a few more conditions attached to it, but bottom line, $250,000, you'll get your citizenship. It takes about 6 months approximately to process all the paperwork. But there's, in terms of retirement over 50s, there's no particular rule about this. So it doesn't matter what you could come in 20 years old. If you've got 250,000, you can get citizenship. If you're 60 years old and 250,000, you can get citizenship. There is talk about this level 250,000 going to 500,000 before the elections. over here. It'll happen sometime probably during the elections, they say. So
when is that?
2023.
Okay.
So people reckon, there'll be some appeasement, some rules changing, etc. So that might go up. What time, when it's going to go up, no one's quite sure at the moment. There are other routes towards citizenship, but they're more expensive. For example, so a business, setting up a business, having 50 Turkish employees, etc. Or the longer route is that you buy a property of any value, but it has to be a livable property. So maybe 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 property. And you keep it for 5 years. You're here living in Istanbul for 5 years, or some part of Turkey for 5 years. And then you can apply for citizenship. It's not guaranteed, but you can do the application for citizenship.
And approximately how long does that take? Once you get the paperwork in place, I mean, is it like a very bureaucratic process?
No, it's bureaucratic. Some people waited 2 years, 3 years, etc. So that process, the 5-year process, and then doing the application after that can take some time.
Okay.
And they'll vet you. They've got certain criteria: how productive you've been to society. Do you know a certain level of Turkish and so on?
Okay, so there's like a citizenship test that you have to
Yeah.
do, like in other countries.
Yep.
Okay. Good question. And if anybody else has a question or a comment, it's 077 614 60614. Just pick up on one thing you said there, Jawad. You said that they may raise the threshold from $250,000, right, US dollars, to 500,000 to appease people.
Yeah.
So when you say to appease people, that would indicate to me that there is some level of underlying resentment of people coming and getting citizenship.
Look, with any country or any nation, you have the liberal side, or you have the right wing, the left wing, etc. And same thing with Turkey, right wing, left wing as well. And when economy goes down, you have certain people complaining about immigrants, foreigners coming in, taking up their jobs, and so on and so forth. And so they put pressure upon the current government as well. So this is something natural we've seen in all countries. Previously, it was 500,000 before it went down to 250,000. So therefore,
okay.
It is.
So the default was 500,000. So it's actually going back up to the normal.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do you know why they brought it down? Was it, they wanted to attract expats at the time? They wanted to attract foreign investment? What was the?
Of course, both of those reasons. It's about foreign investment. It's about bringing foreign currency, encouraging the the construction industry as well. People begin to live here, economy grows, etc. So it's a benefit to quite a lot of people, to be honest.
Okay, so I mean, we talked about people from a Pakistani background. Of course, Noura, you're from an Arab background. I know from my own experience that the Turkish people are very welcoming of people from Pakistani background. There seems to be like a connection there, a brotherhood there. But we do hear stories and news reports about there being some resentment about people from an Arab background, especially with the influx of Turkish refugees, etc. What's your experience been compared to Burhana's, for instance?
I must say, overall, my experience was very positive. Alhamdulillah, I have made very little negative experience, though there are some resentments, and they're more historic. Like I remember we had a neighbor, and we used to live in a different area before. We used to live in an area where there was no expat community. It was just a Turkish area. That was the first area we moved to. And we really tried, to make an effort to become friends with other families, to socialize with them. And they were friendly. But I remember there was a conversation between my husband and a neighbor. And when they became, more acquainted with each other and more, more friends with each other, he mentioned this. He said that, basically, we don't have anything against Arabs, but you really betrayed us in the past. And he really used that word, you betrayed us. And my husband, he was a bit, we know this as Arabs, we know this, but he was a bit shocked that, you know me personally, we have spent some time with each other. So why would you still have that resentment that, I or Arabs in general betrayed you? So yes, there is that historical complex, but I feel that in the areas where the Arabic communities are a bit larger, people just, through living with each other and getting to know each other, I think it becomes less important. And maybe it's just, for the people that haven't had any personal contact with Arabs or with, Arab Muslims, for them, it is more of a thing. And once they get used to people, once they, what I can see here, for example, in the Turkish, the Turkish mosques, for example, they really welcome people like Arab reciters, reciting the Quran, doing even the iqama, doing the adhan. There are no resentments, alhamdulillah, as to that. But generally speaking, yes, there is this historic complex. But I feel like, you know, once you make personal contact with people and they get to know each other, they just overcome it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And Rehan, just in terms of safety and security. So, you know, my experience like I said, in the Gulf, a very, very secure place, felt very safe there to go out at nighttime. Women would go out at nighttime by themselves, etc., or in groups, and nobody ever felt that they would be in danger. What's the safety like for females in Istanbul, or does it vary from area to area?
Yes, it definitely varies from area to area. I mean, generally speaking, it's safe. You know, you have you're able to walk around. You're able to use, for example, the metro, the public transport. But it depends where you are and where you're going. You know, so there are some areas that you definitely would not go, and they are known areas that, you know, maybe have higher crime rate, not so safe for even, you know, men or women to go. But generally, you know, there are areas that in my area, for example, it's quite safe for us to, you know, walk around even at night. It's fine.
Okay. And is that true? I know we mentioned outside of Istanbul as well, and so, you know, Jawad mentioned kind of the holiday areas, the lager louts, and that kind of thing. I'm imagining that as you go towards these areas, the safety security becomes more like we might be used to over here in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, definitely tourist areas are less safe, you know. So the more crowded the areas are, or more touristy the areas are, it's less safe.
Okay, but I think it's generally not violent crime, is it? It's more kind of pickpocketing and that kind of thing. Sorry, Jawad, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. It's more to do with the tourist crime or crime related to tourists. In terms of general safety, yep, the police have to make sure it's safe because it's a tourist area. They don't want tourists not coming to an area because of some crime level. So generally they are safe, but yeah, it's a certain type of crime that you might see.
Okay. Just generally, what would you say are, in your experience, the advantages and disadvantages of living in Turkey? I mean, I know there are definitely advantages, you mentioned at the beginning, in terms of the reasons why people move there, the reasons why, the expectations they have. I imagine there's some disadvantages as well. Maybe you could just, you know, so one of the things I was thinking of, I'll tell you from my experience, is I thought that the public transport system there is really, really first class. Compared to, for instance, in London, it's much less. Well, it's not that it's less crowded. At busy times, it's busy, but it's efficient and it's clean. And of course, from an Islamic point of view, you know, in terms of the food, the having masajid everywhere, things like that. That'd be my perspective. But from your point of view, having experienced having been there and integrating with the community, what are the advantages and the key ones which you would want to tell the viewers?
Yeah, I'll go. Look, there's medical advantages as well.
Okay.
These waiting queues with the NHS, etc. Even the level of the quality of the doctors and the sympathy that you find, it's a lot different. The experience there's a world of difference, and there's a world of difference between both of them. I know people have come in for kidney transplants, things like this, and the level of service is very good. Of course, there will be places that are here just for the money, like any other place, you know, and so on. But the level of healthcare is good, to be honest. Even the government level healthcare. In terms of safety, we've said I've got people here who, you know, some people thought, okay, Ramadan's coming, I'll go back to England, or I'll do this, I'll do that, and then they've changed their mind. They want to stay in Istanbul, they want to stay in Turkey because of the environment, the atmosphere, feeling relaxed, the calm that you have. You don't have that rat race that you have in England, etc. There's a big calming effect over here, even for children to have friends who you know will be good friends for them. It's calming. It takes a lot of stress away from you. Yep. And the safety that you have, the ease at which you can culture them as well, the environment, all that stress relief, shall we say, and then for you to get on with whatever you want to get on with as well, or your responsibilities and duties, they're all advantages, to be honest. Disadvantages, for me, fish and chips.
What, it's not as good, or you just don't get it over there?
You just don't get it. I haven't tasted anything as good as
that. You don't get fish and chips in a city which is on a river.
Not like you get, not the cotton chips. Yeah, that's the one thing I miss.
Burhaan and Noura, what about yourselves? Advantages, disadvantages?
I mean, yeah, I think advantage is definitely just being around in a Muslim country. For me, I think hearing the adhan, for my children to be able to go to the mosque, even in Ramadan, they can go to the mosque and pray and come back
by themselves.
That's by themselves.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, and that's such a blessing. Alhamdulillah, that I don't have to worry about them. The mosque is not too far from my house, but the point is that they can go and they can come back, and I'm happy with that. So just being in a Muslim country, I think, is the most advantageous in itself. Disadvantage, I would say, is maybe the language and communication, because that is, I think, one of the struggles that expats have here. Is where, for example, the most simple thing you want to do and you're not able to do it because you can't communicate properly. And sometimes we don't realize how important language is. So when you want to find a particular part for a machine part, or if you want to call up someone and talk to them or try to make an appointment, those are barriers that I've sort of faced, which is a disadvantage. But the onus then is on us to learn the language quicker, inshallah, so we can overcome those hurdles, inshallah.
Okay. Nora, do you have something to add?
Yeah, for me also as a mother, I would just agree with Farhana. The biggest advantage is to live in an atmosphere where you feel like you can really nurture your children to become good Muslims, inshallah, because that's what you worry about the most as a mother and as a woman. And alhamdulillah, there's so many things that really facilitate that. The kids hearing the adhan, going to the mosque, like they said, going by themselves to the mosque because you feel that's what they can do, it's safe enough, and playing with other children where you feel that the families, they care about Islam just as much, learning the Arabic language, learning Quran at the mosque, all these things, they really just facilitate the parenting that we are all wishing for and that was so difficult for us in the West. And then I feel, when it comes to regrets or like disadvantages, it always really it depends on what the expectations are. So I really would ask everyone to have very realistic expectations. You are coming to a secular country, you're not coming to you are coming to a majority Muslim country, but at the same time it is a secular country. So there are notions of liberalism, there are notions of secularism within people, even within the Muslim community. That is just what it is. But once you know that, and once you are aware of that, you don't become you aren't that disappointed with what you find, so do not expect to be in an Islamic country where everything is perfectly Islamic. Once that is the expectation, definitely you're going to be disappointed with some things. But once you have a realistic expectation, I really, alhamdulillah, I must say I don't have any regrets about coming here.
Okay, alhamdulillah. We're kind of coming up to the end of the show, but it was one thing I just wanted to touch upon. But before that, I just let the listeners and the viewers know that after the Dhuhr Adhan, we have a program called Fit for Ramadan with Brother Jihad. He's going to be discussing Sunnah sports. He's going to be discussing diet, how sports is a legitimate career path, and he's going to have a special guest who's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor called Nisar Sheikh. So please do continue listening in and watching, and join Brother Jihad after the Adhan at around 1:05. You mentioned about the kids, etc. So we've talked a lot about how our perspective as and your perspective as adults integrating. How have the kids, both Rahana and Nora, how have your kids managed to integrate in? Have they found it had been relatively easy? From a schooling point of view, from making friends, being accepted, that kind of thing, children's activities. Can you give us some insight into the kids' experience?
I think it depends on the area that you're in. We were in an Asian area earlier before, and it was more difficult for my children to make friends because of the language. They, especially the older ones, they felt somewhat isolated. But now we're in a more a larger expat community area, and alhamdulillah, my children have been able to make friends. The older ones and the younger ones, they've been able to make friends and almost sort of build a small friendship community within themselves, and hope to do social activities together. And us as mums, we facilitate that for them. So that's been a good experience for them. How I think one of the things is to realize it's been a COVID kind of year, so maybe we haven't been able to go as far far as we wanted to, or the children haven't been able to as many things as they wanted to because of that. But even within that, they you know, for myself, my children feel very settled, you know, with the environment that they're in.
Yeah, I really shared that experience. So when we lived earlier in the more Turkish part of Istanbul, you know, I sent my kids to a Turkish kindergarten, and they picked up, you know, quite a lot of the Turkish language, but they would always feel like, you know, we're a bit different. But here in this area with the large expat community, it's really, they just really identify with everybody else because everybody else is from a different country and everybody else came sort of for the same reasons. So they really identify with one another, and they really are able to you know, build relationships, build friendships, and you know, they would have friends coming, knock the door, asking about them. That is something very nice for a kid to know that there's someone asking about me that wants to play with me. And I think it's, you know, it's the experience that a lot of people make, that alhamdulillah, you know, because these are like family areas, people have kids and they come, you know, to live here with their kids, and the kids play with each other and they can have activities together. And alhamdulillah, I think especially for the kids, it's a very rewarding experience to be in such a place.
And I assume that the kids pick up the Turkish language relatively quickly. You mentioned it earlier in the show.
Yeah, they do, definitely.
And that makes it much easier to integrate, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. And one other thing which I found when I was there, and something I was reading about, is that, and correct me, that I think we talked about this last time as well, because we did a similar show last year, is the adhan in Turkey, right? You have different types of adhans for the different prayers. And I think that came into being at the time of the Ottomans for people who are visually impaired, so they could tell which salah it was if, for instance, they'd fallen asleep during the day. Is that right?
I mean, for sure, there are 5 different adhans. I don't know the reason behind it, but yes, you know, each one has its own melody, its own tune. One is longer, one is shorter. You know, Maghrib is very fast, and then the Asr one is, you know, a bit longer, and it's nice. You definitely can differentiate the adhans.
I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere, but maybe I dreamt it. I'm not sure. But I think it sounds right, right? So it sounds like a legitimate thing, and let's stick with that because it makes it sense. It's a nice narrative, even if it may not be accurate. But I'm sure somebody will text in or call us in and tell us whether we're right or not. Okay, so we're kind of wrapping up our show now. And we'll join you again on Wednesday, inshallah, where we'll have another kind of expat show where we'll be talking about living in sorry, not in Turkey, we've just done that. Living in Doha, living in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Kuwait. Hopefully we'll have some interesting guests for you as well then. Jawad, just final thoughts in terms of if people are thinking of moving to Turkey, what sort of preparatory work would you say they should do? What are the key things they should be looking at now if they're kind of, and what kind of time frames should they have in mind in terms of if they're starting to think about it now, when might they be able to be ready to move?
One thing is sooner the better, but everyone knows their own capabilities and resources that they have. So I'm not going to put a time frame on this, but sooner the better due to political or economic reasons. In terms of what they need to be doing, a certain amount of study, not too much research. I know some people who look at this in almost like a PhD study of every single city in Turkey, etc., where they should go, where they shouldn't go. The ideal thing is really find some friends, find some people who you can connect with, go to that place, yeah, and that'll make your life a lot easier, and they'll be able to help you along the way. So that's the main thing. And then obviously, while you're doing that, some remote income, online work, or something, a way in which you realize how you're going to sustain yourself while you're over there.
Okay. Rehan and Noura, from your perspectives, what sort of groundwork should be done?
Yes, I think, you know, doing some research, learning the language, and if you're serious about coming to Turkey, start learning the language. You know, it will give you a good base to start with. And you know, I think definitely, you know, choose one, you know, 2 or 3 countries that 2 or 3 cities that you might be interested, but don't make it very broad, and just, you know, stick with those. Once you're here, if you decide you don't like an area, you can always move to another area, you know. And I think once you're here, things look very different from on the outside, so it's very important to come in and get a good understanding what it's actually like on the ground here, before you can really decide as a long-term plan where to live.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say get yourself emotionally ready, get your kids emotionally ready, and you know, just pray istikhara, make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates it, because in the end, if you're doing this for Allah, it will be easy. But pick up some courage also. It's a big step, but at the same time, if you're doing it for the right reasons, inshallah, it will be facilitated. Have the conversation with, the spouses should have the conversation. They should really be able to make that decision, and then have the conversation with the kids. And then inshallah, just rely on Allah and take the step.
Exactly. And if it works out, it's for the best. And if it doesn't work out, it's also for the best.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Really appreciate you giving us your time. Thank you to Jawad, to Rahana, and to Noura. And inshallah, please do join us again on Wednesday at midday for the Midday magazine. And like I said, we'll be talking about expat life in the Gulf. And until then, have a good the rest of your fast today. And we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.